Welcome to Strip Cover Lit. I am Adrian Fort, and we are here for the first in a 5-part series of something that I promised a very long time ago, but I never delivered on because, well, I'm a hunk of junk. But this is a 5-part series on, as we chronicle our journey through the Hungry Ghost Festival by Jen Campbell. And part 1 is a discussion on the entirety of this score of poems. Part 2 is a read-along, sort of a reaction to each poem as we go through. Part 3 is the actual review of the entire piece, the collection, the entire collection. Part 4 is a rant that I have named The Perishing Poetica. And part 5 is going to be 5 writing tips from the Hungry Ghost Festival by Jen Campbell. Now, when we get into a discussion on something like this, it's so hard, because this is 20 poems, so it's hard to sort of wrap up your feelings on an entire collection or the talking points that you want to present on an entire collection such as this. But for me, I think that I have to start with the fact that this is a type of poetry that is very different for me. I'm a big fan of Bukowski. I'm a big fan of Emily Dickinson. I've tried a lot of other poets. Richard Sykin's one that I really enjoyed, but this is different even than that. To me, this is a, and I hate to say a type of poetry because there's a lot of diversity within these 20 poems. These aren't 20 poems of the same thing, which ends up being how Charles Bukowski or Emily Dickinson feels at times. But this is a type of poetry that has always struck me as sort of a refined stream of consciousness, if that makes sense. Very impressionistic, very free form. And I'm not sure why those things are difficult for me as a reader, but they are. With Emily Dickinson, you tend to get the big ideas, right? I died for beauty, because I could not stop for death. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches on the soul. And you're left, after you read one of Emily Dickinson's poems, to whittle it down to what it means to you. Because I could not stop for death, you're wondering what exactly that means. So you have to parse it down to something that makes sense in your life. Or, I died for beauty but was scarce adjusted in the tomb when one who died for truth was laying in an adjoining room. What does it mean to die for beauty? What does it mean to die for truth? And you're left to extract from that, from those capital letter words, some type of meaning for yourself. With Bukowski, you're given very little things, very precise moments. There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out. I met a genius on the train today, about 6 years old. I writhe in dirty sheets while staring at blue walls and nothing. And from these moments that Bukowski presents, you're left to build something out of it. With Emily Dickinson, you're left from on high looking down at your life. With Bukowski, you're in the small cradle looking up at the bigger universe, and you've got to figure something out from this very small, very precise moment. I should have closed that window because there's dogs barking back there, but oh well. Jen's poetry seems to me to exist in a different world entirely. A world without capital letters. A world whose moments are blended together sometimes, and other times they are outright frayed at the edges. Many of these poems seem to encapsulate a moment that is the great expanse. For me, the best example of this is Kitchen, which I'll say again later in this series, is a sneaky good poem. I'll pick something at random to read from this, and I think I'll be able to better make this point from any part in the poem. We could have been in a field, a wooden spoon dug into my back. I thought it funny. Let's not talk of death where food is prepared, I said. This is a very specific moment, like Bukowski has written from, but it does talk about the big ideas. Funny is a big idea, death is a big idea, and on a much more humanistic level, preparing food is a very big idea. You have to do it every day. So I think that Jen's poetry exists very much in this sort of middle this different world entirely. I don't know how to exactly to express it. That said, I did enjoy this collection greatly, and I think that what this is going to do for me as a reader and my readership and my readerhood is that it is going to, this proves to me that I should be picking up other artists, other poets, other types of poetry that I do not look at immediately and get, right? For me, that's my main crux at the beginning of this video was that this is a type of poetry that is difficult for me because I have to do more digging to extract meaning for myself than with other poems and poets that are more readily available to my senses and sensibilities, like Emily Dickinson and Charles Bukowski. So while and whereas I have tried Billy Collins and didn't get anything out of it, I have tried Mary Oliver, didn't enjoy it at all, this convinces me to keep looking. In fact, at times, it reminded me of my experience with Tracy K. Smith's Life on Mars. As far as having to reread it like I did with this, I had to reread all of those poems to find myself in them. But also, it takes you someplace new with things that are very familiar. For example, on page 17, from a poem called Angel Metal, our woolen scarves touch our noses, catch our breath like cloth balloons. We dig our feet into the soil and stamp down into the very deep. Somewhere below, the river sleeps with a lady screeching. She has arms that could carry boulders to the edge of cliffs. We wait for her to throw us down. These are all things that you can readily see, that you can readily envision, but they're taking you someplace that you've never been. Or on page 20, from a poem called Gambit. Red Queen snapping, could I shove my limbs behind the cushions with the 1 penny piece and June's mini milk sticks. Very familiar visuals. You can see all of that. But it's doing something very different. I'm sorry that I don't have the terminology to be able to better express this, but it's taking you someplace different with things that you've seen, things that you know. And another example of this on page 31, from the Patron Saints of Animals. My task is putting prayers out on the napkins like a specials board. I divide the words up as I would cut grain. No one crows for us in the morning now. It is our job to always wake ourselves. Mother calls this our crystal dawn. It means she often misses breakfast. She feeds the kid goats at the table out of bottles, old body parts we no longer need. Father reddens but does not speak of it. Upstairs, the top sew has the larger bath. And my final argument in the discussion about Jen Campbell's The Hungry Ghost Festival, I have included in the description below a link both to Jen's channel and to where you can pick this up. It's very important that we support artists, especially poets. And I'll get into this more in the 4th video of this series, the rant on the perishing Poetica. But this isn't like the Metallica versus Napster argument, right? Metallica was set. Metallica was made. Metallica didn't need your $12 back in 2001, right? Which they probably only see $4 of every $12.99 album they sell. They don't need it. And to put your money where your mouth is with a poet on the individual level makes a direct impact on the artistic world and in the writing community. And it is only through the purchase of poetry that we can speak to the Barnes and Nobles of the world, or hell, I don't even know what other book retailers still exist. But there is a perishing Poetica. It is shrinking. Poetry is leaving us. And the only people you can find in the poetry section anymore are the Shakespeares, the Mary Olivers, the Billy Collins. A lot of times I can't even find Emily Dickinson in a poetry section. But that's all I got for the discussion of Jen Campbell's The Hungry Ghost Festival. Make sure you check out Jen's video. If you like this sort of thing, hit like and subscribe. And I hope to see you for the read-along for Jen Campbell's The Hungry Ghost Festival.